Ask it again.
Well, in plain English, how do we get you elected? What is it that we got to do to get a man that respects the Constitution in office as the Harris County Sheriff?
Well, the true answer to that is getting the voters to understand what they're losing. Because it's really simple to have someone think that what they have, they're always going to have. And the truth is, every day it's being eroded a bit more, a bit more, a bit more. And so until you can figure out a way to go out and engage the public that says, if we don't do something right now, and you almost have to pick an office one at a time, because people get caught up who's going to be in the Washington, who's going to be in the White House in Washington. Well, the truth of it is, that has a much smaller effect on your life every day than what happens right here on the ground in the county you live in.
Right.
So if it's the sheriff, and if it's the sheriff that's the highest elected law enforcement officer in the county, says, we're not going to do this thing anymore because it is breaking the law, it is violating the Constitution, we're not going to do it anymore. The sheriff is in a position to do that flawlessly. When a regular citizen says it, they can kind of get talked down or pushed aside. But when the sheriff says, we're going to follow these rules, we're going to follow these principles, we're going to follow these mandates, when the sheriff starts setting policy that he has a right to do, I think that's what people need to look at. Who has the biggest influence on your life? Because if you think it's your state legislator, no, he's one of many. If you think it's your congressman, oh, that's one of many more. Right. But when you think of your sheriff, if the sheriff says that I am going to protect and defend the Constitution, and I don't care what side of the political coin on it, that's just as important to a Democrat as it should be to a Republican or a Green Party or a Libertarian. It should be just as important that the right you have to gather and speak and all of that is protected. Doesn't matter what you're saying. There's plenty of things people say that I don't like, right, but I will protect their right to say it. That's the difference. So that's what people have to understand, is quit getting caught up in trying to find what you believe may be your perfect candidate, for whatever your perfect is. Knowing that the most important trait you can have in any elected official, but particularly your sheriff, is one who at all costs will protect and defend the Constitution. That's what it takes. Getting that message to everybody that understands how important that is.
Well, then that's what we need to do.
That's it. It's public awareness. It's it's like this rally coming up. Radio start playing, and so bringing in a guy like Ted is going to bring a lot of attention to this.
Right.
There are people that are going to want to say bad things about Ted. There's people that want to say bad things about me. I don't care, because I know what's at stake. I know what's at stake. And if we don't do something with this, if we lose what we know as America, and the bad part about it, most Americans can't fathom it. They can't even fathom it because it's all they know. And if it's gone, what we're doing today, we won't be able to do. It doesn't matter what you're out rallying for or rallying against. If you let this slip away, you won't be able to talk about it, unless it's what those in power happen to agree with, won't you?
That's right. Guys our age, we remember when there was a free speech zone. It was called the whole damn country.
Yeah.
They didn't rope a section off and say, okay, all you people that want to say what's on your mind, get over there. They didn't do that. I can remember a time when to get on an airplane, you walked through a metal detector and you got on the airplane. You didn't get halfway undressed, and nobody ran you through a microwave oven or decided to grab your crotch. There wasn't any of that. But now, I have a 16-year-old son. The first time he flew on a plane, I think he was 4 years old. That's all he's ever known. Well, he's 16. 5 more years, he's going to be a voter. And having all that at the airport and free speech zones and things like that is going to become, that's going to be all he's ever known. It's going to be what's normal to him.
How old is he, 16?
He's 16.
Well, in 2 more years, he's a voter.
Actually, yes, 2 more years. We're out here at an open carry rally. I'm thinking about getting a concealed handgun license. But you're right. In 2 more years, he's a voter, and he's old enough for the United States government to hand him a machine gun and say, "Let's go." Now he's going to be a little different because he's got a different father. He's got a dad that remembers how it used to be, knows how it ought to be, and is teaching that to him. Most of the folks out there in the world aren't doing that.
Yeah, but you know what? You can pull someone off the street that maybe they have no significant formal education and ask them certain things. And they'll ask them, what gives you the right to say something? Most people know. First Amendment gives me the right. You know, what gives me the right to be quiet if the police show up? Yeah, the Fifth Amendment does that. You know, so those things are so important that people don't have 500 degrees hanging on the wall know what that means.
Right.
And so, and it means the same thing to everybody, regardless of what you're arguing about. And that's what we have to do. We have to make this, the government and politics and party politics, unfortunately, is doing damage. Because when we start thinking about how the whole thing started, I mean the whole thing, we had people who had fled tyranny. They came here and they thought, you know what? We have to put something in place. We got to put something in place so we don't have to live through that again.
Right.
And they were so incredibly wise in what they did in trying. And what they did was, what they did that.
First time that's happened.
Now we look at it today, and we have people that are just letting it slip away. We've had, you know, veterans have died in every part of the globe fighting for an idea that started more than a couple hundred years ago to protect this place. But at the same time, we have people that are right here that will tell you every day that they're American and they believe in the American way, but they're willing to give up the very thing that gives them the right to do whatever it is they do. And so this isn't a black issue, it's not a white issue. To me, it's an American right issue or wrong issue, and truly it's an American issue. Because if you ask American, are you an American? What's that mean? That doesn't mean you're a color. That means you are from a place that has a certain ideology. That's what being an American means. You know, it's like the flag. You know, some people want to burn it, others would die for it. How do you create such a great divide over the same thing? It's because some have forgotten, some will never forget.
Well, we got to start somewhere, and I think I'd like to start with the Harris County Sheriff's Office.
Well, you know, it takes work. I've been working at it for years, and I truly believe that right now is the time that it's going to require people to show up and set aside fear. Because fear is the most crippling thing that the government has used to keep people down. You know, if the government can make the black man be afraid of the white man and the white man be afraid of the black man, when the truth of it is, when it all comes down to it, we're all brothers. Every one of us. I mean, in the eyes of God, I don't think God sees race. He sees your mind in your mind. And that's how it ought to be. You know, so all the rest of it is tricks and, you know, that the government does. And people get in power and they forget why they're there. And that's the one thing that why I'm so willing to say exactly what I believe in. I've written my thoughts in a book. I put it on paper because they're not going to change. They're not negotiable. I mean, what I believe in, if you don't like them, that's okay. I mean, it's really okay because that's your right not to like them. If you want to speak against me, guess what? You have the right to do that. And I don't have a right to do anything about it. And that's how this is supposed to be.
Exactly right.
That's what it's supposed to be. So when we all come down to, you know, what Open Carry Texas is doing, and it's kind of unfortunate if you think about it, because you've put a lot of work and effort into something that you shouldn't even have had to fight for because the Constitution gave it to you.
That's exactly right.
You know?
That is exactly
so that is.
Well, that just goes to illustrate. You get folks that get in power. Politician gets elected. Maybe at some point in time, doing the right thing is important to that person. Once they get in there, staying in there becomes more important than doing what they went there for in the first place. And that's where you get all of these things, all of these changes. You know, people can argue all they want to about something like the Second Amendment. The fact of the matter is, if you go back and you take a look at what was going on in the country at the time, and you read the things that the Founding Fathers wrote, the picture of exactly what they intended becomes crystal clear and really unable to be argued. But that's not the way that it's practiced now. And it is that way exactly because of what you talked about. Yeah, folks that get in there and they forgot why they came.
Yeah, and there was something that, you know, when the Founding Fathers thought of it all, And you know, there was an ideology, a thought of a citizen statesman. Go, whether it was to the country's capital, the nation's capital, or go to your state capital, do a job, and then go home and live under those rules you helped create. Because if you have to do that, you start to become much more concerned about the rules you put into play when you've got to live under.
That's right.
And so, you know, you've got a guy, I want to say he's from Michigan, John Conyers. I think he's been in the U.S. House for 50 years. 50 years. That is, if my math is right, he got to Congress just a year or two after I was born. And my question is, at what point was he ever useful? And if he was useful, when did it stop? Because I just don't know how much can be done that one guy hadn't got it accomplished in 50 years.
50 years. That's right.
You know? And so, but who do you fault in that? Ultimately, you have to fault voters who keep sending the same people back, and then they keep having the same old complaints. So how this is supposed to be, if the voters of Harris County say, you know what, we want Carl Pittman to be our sheriff. I've got 4 years, not to be worried about getting reelected. I got 4 years to do my job. Hopefully do it better than any sheriff's ever done it here.
Right.
And then at the end of that 4 years, if I decide to run again, it'll be very clear that I ought to run again, because people are going to want you to do that.
Right.
Because that's what people are looking for.
That's right.
But I also know that there has to be a time self-imposed by me, because the law doesn't put one in place that says you can only be sheriff for 1 term or 2 term or 3 terms. The law doesn't say that. For me, I know that staying in something too long can become a bad thing.
Yes, sir. Sure can.
And so, but that's because I actually care about the place. I'm not looking at trying to create some situation where I'm sheriff for 30 years and then I somehow try to wiggle my son into being the sheriff when I leave. You know, I'm not King George. You know, we don't get to pass this down that way. You know, and so
a lot of that going around. Isn't it kind of funny that the next presidential election is most likely going to be Bush versus Clinton? Where have I heard that?
Well, yeah, and you think, I mean, how many family names is it in the United States of America? But somehow we keep getting the same ones. Is it just because they're just the smartest ones here? I don't know. I'm going to guess probably not.
I'm right there with you.
So, you know, again, when the people decide, and that's only when the people decide that they want this government to be a government that serves them, this will change. And not one moment before. Not one moment before.
I think you're right.
That's the final story.
I think you're right.
That's what it is. So, it'll be all right.
I sure hope so.
Well, you know, if all else fails,
we're going to do what we can to make it right.
Well, yeah,
and
that's what we're all supposed to do. Is never give up, always fight. Because to me, the way I see it is, the people who came before me, who gave everything so that I could have a shot to do this, I owe them something.
That's right.
It's not. I don't have it written down, but in here I know I owe them something.
That's right.
And what I absolutely owe them is to keep going forward and don't give up and be true to what I believe in. And what I believe in is, and you'll hear very few people running for office that have this in their mind. This whole place is more important than me. It is.
Right.
It just is. I mean, I like to think I'm pretty important, but the real story is, this whole thing is more important than me.
Right.
And that's why Marines have charged machine gun bunkers, knowing that they were probably going to die. But they had to get something done. And what were they doing it for? To protect more than them. That's the whole thing. And so when we need people that are going to be completely, almost not caring about themselves to make this work. Because if you think about what the founding fathers did, they knew they were facing death. If they didn't win, if they didn't prevail, they were going to die.
And the funny thing is, a lot of those guys, you know, George Washington, I don't know how factually accurate this is, but I've seen it on several documentaries and I've read it before. He was essentially the richest man in the country. He was basically the Bill Gates. Now, can you imagine Bill Gates betting the whole farm, everything, to change something? Warren Buffett literally saying, I am the richest, most privileged, I can have anything I want. and I'm going to lay it all on the line. Forget red and black. I'm putting it on red, white, and blue. Now let's roll the wheel. And it takes a certain amount of not just courage, but you really got to believe in what you're doing. You really have to think that what you're doing is right and what you're trying to build is the way that it needs to be, because these guys risked not just their lives, a pretty damn good life. Yeah. They were doing okay. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to do any of this. They did it, and from there, right on down the line.
But they had a close look at what was wrong. They fled what was wrong, right. And what they knew is they didn't want it here. Right. And that's the difference today. Some of these people, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and I mean, we're talking some rich because of money, not necessarily because of their content.
Right.
Okay? But when you think about it, this very system that some of them absolutely proclaim to hate is what gave them that incredible wealth.
That's right.
It's no difference, when you have, people that come to this country from other places in the world that hate this country, that hate it, that they advocate destroying this country, but they come here and they will do everything they can to benefit from what it gives them. Right. And it's sad. It's so sad, and this country should be a little bit smarter than, as to who it lets in, but that's another story. But
there's a reason for it. Yeah, there's a reason that's in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an absolute reason that's in place.
Yeah, politics plays something in almost everything we do, and I have people that tell me all the time, even with the sheriff's office, they tell me, well, I just want to stay away. I just want to stay out of politics. I'm saying, something, you can do your very best to stay out of politics. You can do your very best to leave it alone. But I promise you one thing, politics will not leave you alone.
That's right. Well, and especially a police officer. A police officer deals with political subjects every day.
Every regular citizen, politics is in everything you do. When you turn that light switch on, you operated the government. Because for that electricity to get to your house, it had to go through a process of government.
Yep.
When you drive your car, your license, your registration, the fuel you put in your car, it's all a process of government.
Touched by the government.
And so that's just why, people, it'd be nice if you could detach yourself from certain things, but government just didn't want to, it just isn't. It just isn't.
That's right.
It doesn't give you that luxury. So.
Well,